able to make those sacrifices and, being able to adjust and adapt and being in uncomfortable situations, because as you go through our life, you're always going to be faced and put in uncomfortable situations. It just may show up in different ways, but everything's not going to always be comfortable for you. So it really stretched me and helped me as far as being able to get used to being in uncomfortable situations, being able to adjust and adapt and be flexible. And it really showed me what true servanthood is about. So for that, I'm grateful, and that's one of the main lessons that I will always take away from that.
Absolutely. You definitely said it right. When we go through those rough transitional seasons, God is doing things behind the scenes. We don't know what he's working out in us. We don't know what he's working through us, because what you also mentioned on page 19 was your process is not even about you, but is more so about those who you are destined to help and impact with your story. So, God knew then you would write this book. So he was giving you, what you needed to give others so that they could get through their seasons, their rough times, their setbacks. He's so strategic, and that's one of the things that I do love about him. Like, when you're going through something, it's like a puzzle. You don't know the whole picture. It's going to be a whole picture, but you don't know how he brings all the pieces together until after you're done. And you're like, okay, God, I see what you were doing. I see why you did this.
Right.
I see why you did that. So, as you mentioned, your mom had a major surgery. You were there to help her as well. One of the main reasons why you were there was to help her. God,
right.
God, he works things out in such a way where, and it doesn't always feel good. That's for sure. I can attest to that. But it's so necessary. And like you said, it brought out, your servitude in yourself, and it kind of pulled things out of you, maybe that you were still working on, your patience, things of that nature. Because let me tell you, serving will definitely test your patience, honey. So I can attest to that. But, I just think it was so good how you put that. And like I said, it's just, your book is so relatable to the average, any person, to me, because it's life, like it's real life. It's not, something that people can't say, well, I've never experienced that. If you are living on earth, you've experienced this stuff that you talk about in your book. So I just
exactly. I say if you live long enough, you're going to experience some type of setback and disappointment in your life. There's no way that you're going to go through your whole entire lifetime and never experience or have a setback or disappointment. And so I can attest to, and I know what that feels like when it feels like you just that you're experiencing setback after setback and disappointment after disappointment, and it's like, and you're saying, well, God, I can't seem to catch a break. What's going on? Or you may feel like, am I doing something wrong? Or, you start going through and trying to rationalize and analyze everything to see where you may have messed up to deserve this. And most of the time, it's not even about that. It's that if God is going to use you in any type of way, in any shape, form, or capacity, then you are going to go through a testing. You have to be able to have went through something to be able to have a testimony to be able to tell others about. Because as the saying goes, you can't have a testimony without a test.
Without a test,
and
absolutely.
So, and you can't be relatable to anyone if you've never went through anything. So just like as you mentioned and what I put in the book, your process is not even about you. It's about those that you are called to help, those that you are called to reach. And a lot of times when we're in the midst of it, of course, we're not thinking about that, but that's what we have to work on and constantly remind ourselves of, is that this is not even about me. It's about me being I'm going to be able to come through and overcome this and be able to show somebody else, how they too can overcome this if they find themselves in the midst of this, and they'll be able to not only be a true testimony, but also to be able to show and empower and provide someone else with a guide or with the tools or with whatever they need to be able to overcome if they find themselves in that exact same situation.
Absolutely. And another thing that I've also noticed when we're going through those tough seasons, God is building our faith. And because when God uses you, you're going to go through a process. You're not going to get to the promise, and you're not going to be used without being processed. So he's going to process you. And in that processing, when he's building you and pulling things out of you, he's also building your faith, because you got to believe, hey, God, I'm going to come through this. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be better. It's something on the other side of this. So that process is necessary. If you look back in the Bible of all the great people that God used, he processed them. Look at Joseph. He was sold into slavery. He was thrown into jail. He was falsely accused, but he ended up being a leader that God used. So you look, it's like you just can use the Bible as a reference tool, and that's one of the things that I do love, because you can't be like, okay, well, God, Joseph had it good. He came up, he glowed up, he didn't go through nothing. No, Joseph went through. He was processed. He was tried in the fire, along with other ones in the Bible that God used. So if they went through, you're going to go through. And Jesus went through. So,
Right. If he went through, then how can we even begin to think that we're going to get a pass? I mean.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's just really good to me. I know you discussed how, setbacks can come in the form of distractions, and when you are being processed by God, the enemy is going to send distractions. He's not going to want you to reach the place where God is trying to get you to. So you're going to experience, those distractions. You're going to experience, you're going to be derailed. You're going to have road bumps. So talk a little bit about overcoming those and some of the setbacks that you've experienced.
Yes, most definitely. So, like you said, a lot of times setbacks can come in the form of distractions. When I mentioned in the first chapter of my book, I start out, when back around the time when I first met my child's father, and how that was a major distraction at the time. For me, I didn't see it as that, of course, at that time, but looking back in hindsight, I realized how that was just a major distraction sent by the enemy, because I was so focused, and I wasn't, thinking about a boyfriend or being in a relationship or any of that stuff at that time. And, of course, God, turning around and made it work for my good, but just experiencing that and, having that encounter, it was definitely a distraction. And it set me back, in some ways. But how I was able to overcome and deal with that is, number one, I had to remind myself that this is just a part of my story, but it's not my whole story, and my story is not over with. So as long as I'm still alive and breathing, and I know that God still has a plan and a purpose for me to fulfill, and that I got to keep going, and I got to keep my eyes on the prize, on that purpose, on that promise that he has promised to me, no matter what comes up, no matter what comes my way. And so that's how I was able to overcome and deal with that, because I realized that this is just a chapter in my story, which literally it was a chapter in my story. But this was just a chapter. This is just a chapter in my story. It's not the whole story. And so I think a lot of times we allow ourselves to get defeated by one chapter in our story, but the book is still being written. The story is not over with yet. So we cannot allow ourselves to become defeated or all the way paralyzed just based off of one chapter or one happening or one situation or one setback. We have to learn how to keep our eyes looking forward, facing forward. And I think that's another thing that, also helped me. I know it probably sounds very basic and very elementary, but when you think about it, a lot of people probably, what really can trip someone up is that they keep looking back, or they keep rehashing or thinking about the past or past mistakes or things that they didn't do right, or things that if they had a do-over that they would do over again. But no, you're not getting a do-over. So like they say, you can't cry over spilled milk. The only thing you can do is just wipe it up and keep it moving. And so that's what I had to do. That's what I chose to do in that particular situation. Is I chose to, okay, I'm not going to be crying and wallowing in the bed over this yet. If you need to have you a day of doing that, and then go ahead and do that and get it out your system.
Get it out your system.
But right, go ahead and get it out your system. It shouldn't be like a week-long thing or a month-long thing where you're laying in the bed depressed, don't want to get up and not doing nothing. Like, take your time, take you a little break, time out if needed, to get back in the game, because life is still going to keep moving. Life is still going to keep going, and you don't have time to just sit and wallow in a pity party. You got to keep moving forward, and you got to keep doing what you got to do.
That's so true. That is so true. And, I listen to that, and what I do realize is we, like you said, looking back and wondering, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I always say, okay, if I could go back, make different choices, would I be, where would I be? But I feel like God allowed us to make those choices because he gives us free will, to get us to a place. And all the choices that we've made ultimately lead us to where we are now. So,
exactly.
You could have made a different choice, but you're going to probably still end up where he wants you to be at the end of the day. And you can't condemn yourself, because God doesn't bring condemnation. That's the enemy. God will convict you. The Holy Spirit will convict you and be like, now, okay, that ain't right, or you shouldn't have done that, or that's not the right decision. But when you're getting beat up and you're constantly feeling, defeated and those feelings of oppression, that's the enemy, and he's going to always bring that. He's going to bring that to you. He's going to, oh, you did this and you did that and you don't deserve this and you don't deserve that, to make you feel like you don't deserve the promises of God. But we have overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony. So we go through those things. We have a testimony. God brings us out, and we're able to help other people, and he's developing us in the process.
Exactly.
So
we all have to go through that process in order to be developed. Just like if you think about like the process of a diamond,
yes,
and the extreme heat and pressure that it has to go through to become a diamond. It doesn't just start out that way. Without going through that process, it will never become that diamond, that beautiful shiny diamond that we like to wear on our finger or around our neck, on a necklace or on a bracelet. It doesn't start out looking like that. It has to go through a very hard and extenuous process.
Yes.
And so it's the same with us. If we want to come out as that pure shiny diamond, we have to endure and also go through our own process.
We do. In going back to the relationship with your child's father, you talked about how it was a little abusive. And abusive doesn't always mean physical. People think when you say abusive, oh, you would beat up. No, you can be verbally abused. Yeah. You can be emotionally abused.
Yeah, there are all different types of
abuse. So what would you say to a young woman now in a relationship that you've experienced and you see the signs and you see what's going on? What would your advice to her be?
What would my advice be to someone that is, if they are in a relationship like that, yes, or they see signs of abuse? So number one is know that you are worth more than that. Never settle for anyone abusing you in any type of way, whether it is physically, mentally, emotionally, verbally, whatever the case may be. Never allow someone to abuse you in any way, shape, form, or fashion just for the sake of having a man, being with somebody. Because I see a lot, especially nowadays, that there are a lot of women out here that will put up with just a whole lot of foolishness, not even talking about abuse, but add abuse onto it just for the sake of